Imagine spending years creating the strongest character in your entire universe, only to spend the rest of the story trying to get rid of him. That's basically what happened to Gojo. Seriously. The strongest sorcerer alive can do basically everything, and then what happens? The villains don't spend half the story trying to beat him. They spend half the story trying to make sure he's not around. They try to seal him, they keep him away, they delay him, because the second Gojo shows up, the fight's basically over. And once I realized that, I started noticing something. This keeps happening. Superman, well, you're some kryptonite. You're out of the game. The Avengers, well, you can't help Spider-Man right now because Spider-Man is in New York City, and also we don't have the budget to have all six of you in the movie, so you can't help. And I can't lie, this happens every single time there's an overpowered character. So that got me thinking, maybe overpowered characters aren't actually the problem. Maybe they're just really, really hard to write. Think about it. Most stories rely on one simple question. Can the hero win? That's what keeps us watching. But what happens when the answer is, yeah, we know they can win every single time? If your main character can punch through planets, move faster than light, and beat every villain without breaking a sweat, where exactly is the tension? You can't keep pretending they're in danger because we know they are in danger, and the writers know that we know, so what do? Well, they just remove the character. And honestly, it's almost become a meme. Every time an overpowered character exists, there's suddenly this incredible convenient reason they can't help. Like for example, Gojo is sealed or Superman ate kryptonite for breakfast so he's weakened. It's like the writer themselves are saying, look, we know he would solve the problem in 5 minutes, but just go with it for story's sake. Writers create these powerful characters and then suddenly they have to pretend those characters forgot how to use their abilities. The best example, The Flash, more specifically the CW's Flash. Barry Allen is literally the fastest man alive. This is a guy who can think faster than computers, react in milliseconds, outrun bullets, run through time, and you're telling me this guy gets punched by a random criminal with an ice gun. There are episodes where Barry could realistically solve the entire conflict in just 5 minutes. Instead, he runs over, stops, has a conversation with them, stands completely still, and somehow gets knocked over. Not because it makes sense, but because the episode still has 35 minutes left. And once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. The writers aren't actually writing about the Flash anymore. They're writing around the Flash. And I'm sorry that I have to make examples out of the DC characters, but then that leads me to Superman. How many times has Kryptonite just shown up out of nowhere at exactly the moment the story needed Superman to struggle? And again, it's not because Superman suddenly became weaker. It's because the story needed him to be. And that's the pattern. The stronger the character becomes, the more invisible rules the writer has to invent just to keep the story moving. And here's the biggest problem. Once the audience starts noticing the writer instead of the character, the illusion disappears. You're no longer asking, how is Superman going to get out of this? You're asking, okay, how are the writers going to nerf him this week? But with that said, here's where I think Superman gets misunderstood. People always say Superman is boring because he's too strong. I don't think that's true. He's only boring when the story thinks his powers are the most interesting part of himself. Because let's be honest, nobody watches Superman wondering, can he stop the asteroid? Of course he can. He's Superman. That's his whole essence. The interesting question has never been, can Clark save the world? It's, can Clark stay kind in a world that constantly gives him reasons not to? Because I know if I was Superman and someone was touching up Lois Lane, I'd also lose my cool and beat everyone up. So when writers are writing Superman, the question really should be, can someone with unlimited power choose compassion and self-control? And that's a much more interesting story rather than watching Superman punch another villain into a building. And that's the same thing with Gojo. People love to say Gojo is the strongest, and yeah, sure, he probably is, but that's not why people love him. Gojo is interesting because despite being the strongest, he keeps failing to save the people who matter the most. He couldn't save Rico, he couldn't stop Ghetto from leaving, he couldn't prevent everything that happened in Shibuya, because if Gojo wasn't sealed or kept away, the whole Shibuya incident would have happened and Gojo would have clapped everyone in about 5 minutes. So for someone who can do almost anything, he spends most of the story confronting the things he can't do. And that's where his character lives. Not inside infinity, but inside regret. And that's another interesting avenue that a character who's overpowered like Gojo can go through. But then there's one character that absolutely just destroys my argument, which is Mob from Mob Psycho. Because Mob is ridiculously overpowered. Yet, Mob Psycho 100 is one of the best written anime I've ever watched. And the reason is because Mob isn't trying to become stronger. He's already stronger than most people. He's trying to become a better person. He wants friends, confidence, a normal life, and he wants to impress the girl that he likes. He also joins the body improvement club, not because it will make him a better psychic, but because he wants to grow as a person. And that's where the story gets interesting, because the emotional conflict has nothing to do with his powers. The real battle is inside him. And imagine if Mob Psycho ended with Mob finally becoming stronger. That would completely miss the point of the whole story. He was already the strongest person in every room he walked into. The story was never about becoming stronger. It was about Maul becoming kinder and growing as a person. So, with all that said, what's the real problem? Well, the problem was never about overpowered characters. The problem is stories that confuse power with character. If your only source of tension is, can the hero beat the bad guy? Then yes, an overpowered protagonist completely breaks your story. But if your story asks, can they forgive themselves? Can they protect the people that they love and stay kind or find a purpose within themselves? Then suddenly, being the strongest person alive doesn't answer any of those questions. Think about the characters we just talked about. People don't remember Maul because he has psychic powers. They remember him because he's just a kid trying to be the best version of himself. When you think of Superman, you don't think of his powers really. You think of the hope that he gives the people. That's character, not power. I think that's why writers struggle with overpowered characters, because power is easy to write. Conflict isn't. Anyone can create a character who destroys planets. That's simple. The difficult part is creating a character whose greatest battle can't be solved with another punch. Maybe that's why the best overpowered characters don't ask, can I beat this villain? They ask something much harder. When all my powers are stripped down away from me, am I still a person worth rooting for? You can make your protagonist as powerful as you want. Just don't make their strength the most interesting thing about them. Because the strongest characters in fiction aren't remembered for what they could do. They're remembered for who they were. And that's how I think you should write a powerful character. Not their powers being the vocal point of everything. And I'm not saying powerful characters are boring, or flashy scenes in anime or movies are overrated. All I'm saying is, if you took your character and stripped them down of all their powers, is that character still worth the watch? And if it isn't, well, then we know the problem. But yeah, that's the video. Let me know who's an overpowered character you think was written well in the comments. Subscribe for more, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.